Ultimately, from an electrical power standpoint, again, on the main truck route, you have two existing facilities. For those of you that I imagine you all know, but Mantua Creek is the separation between PSE&G east or just upriver in West Deptford. Connective AC Electric is south of Mantua Creek. So in this particular case, in talking to Connective, we anticipate having to upgrade the poles along the truck route in order to service the marine terminal. Now to talk about what the marine terminal is. Again, it's approximately 200 acres in total, but when you then subtract out the landfill, Paulsboro packaging, which is still under the acquisition process, you remove another component which is known as the BP's groundwater treatment plant. That groundwater treatment plant will continue to perform its remediation function for the next 10 to 20 years. So we have not included that in the plan. And lastly, there is a waterfront development parcel that the borough of Paulsboro will be developing for your waterfront access, marina type components, etc. When you take all those away, the phase 1 program for Paulsboro is approximately 160 acres within a footprint of 200 acres if you simply go around the perimeter. Okay? From the access road component, and this is a plan view. If you want a 3-dimensional rendering of all that, what that would constitute is provided here. Also, it's tried to give you an idea of looking from the angle east, looking north, and in this particular case, we're standing on top of Philadelphia Airport, looking south. Two different perspectives, one flat, one less. The different commodities that you see, or the different colors, relate to different commodities. You see over here we talked about 5 or 6 different commodities that are handled. In this particular case, we're following a similar program where there's different colors for different commodities, and we can go through the details of that if you have questions in the back. But ultimately, also what these are large warehouse structures. Everyone is familiar with those. Each one of those is about 250,000 square feet. So there's 1 million square foot of covered warehouse that can accommodate different kinds of cargoes, whether it be dry bulk or perishables such as bananas and pineapples, which the Port Corporation's large tenant is Del Monte, which is the Port Corporation's Camden facility, is the largest banana handling facility on the East Coast. Bananas happen to be one of those programs that are also holding market share, which we continue to eat. Anyway, coming through the access road, we have the main, what we call the transportation corridor through the center of the program. This is a public terminal, which means any shipper can utilize that facility according to the tariff schedule or the leases that the Port Corporation has. If you are, in this particular case, if you want to have access to that marine terminal, there will be a perimeter security fence. Why? There's an MPSA requirement. It's Marine Transportation Security Act. It's a Coast Guard mandated program. It came out post-2001. In order to have access, you need to have a background check, fingerprint, etc. for security reasons. But there is a main entrance, which is a gate. As you come in, there also is the main rail component. Provide rail up alongside the water side, so that again, not only do we want to focus on truck traffic, but rail traffic in order to minimize or maximize cost efficiencies. 1 million square foot of covered warehouse, a number of different commodities. I can go through this, I can spend another 10 minutes going through details of this. But one of the last important elements is remediation followed by redevelopment. For those of you that aren't familiar, BP, the Ethics Chemical parcel, has a no further action letter from the DEP. BP is currently working through what's known as a remedial action work plan, which identifies the different kinds of elements they need to do for remediation. They will then be performing that remediation according to their DEP-approved plan, and then we will be coming in behind them. We, the redevelopment or the Paulsboro Marine Terminal, will come behind them and build off of their completed remediation program. An interesting aspect of this project is it ranges from about +2 in an elevation to about +13 in the back. We plan to raise, and by the way, the 100-year flood stage is 8.5 or 8.8. We plan to raise the elevation of this terminal up to plus 11. Why? We all hear about stormwater surge and elements of flood control and FEMA requirements. One of the issues we'd like to do as we build this is to raise it up high enough so that currently the Port Corporation operates two facilities, as I've mentioned. They were built in 1933, and we first put, the original Broadway terminal was built in 1898. So the point is, we want to make sure as we're building Paulsboro, we're also building infrastructure that we can continue to operate for another 100 years. So we want to make sure that the sea level rise issue is one that we take into consideration today. But it also provides the cap between a finished surface for the marine terminal and the pre-approved and completed remediation. We can talk about this more, but at the end of the day, it's 3 deep water berths for international shipping and 1 barge berth, and that's that transportation corridor, office building, etc. A graphic to give you an idea of what the facility may look like. This is the deck. Those are a pile-supported program, rail trestles, transit sheds, piles going down into the ground, and then retained fill. Earth, dirt. Dredging. This gives you a footprint of the dredging program necessary to achieve what's known as minus 40 feet, or alongside the wharf, we'll have 40 feet of water before we get down to the mud. Existing is minus 37 here for the 2 berths for BP, so not a lot of significant dredging. More dredging in this corner as we wrap ourselves into Mantua Creek. How do we plan to accommodate that? As we dredge, we use the existing breasting dolphins that are there from BP's use. We do something that's called annealing, where we take a cementitious type product, we wrap it around the dirt molecules so that you're kind of like a cast, then you put it on land, you mix it with other soil, and you raise the grade. So what you're doing by default is you're taking silts that have been accumulating over 20, 30, 40 years, annealing them, giving them structural capacity, mixing them with other material, clean material that's being brought in as part of raising that grade, and that helps you cost effectively do your dredging program as well as raising the grade. But it's what's known as beneficial reuse of dredge material. And from a bulk and break bulk standpoint, the ships that typically call are 35 to 38 feet or less. Therefore, the issue of whether the channel needs to be deepened or not is not an issue for Paulsboro. Its initial ships will accommodate the existing channel depths, so that's a discussion for others to have. Looking at the roadway, we talked briefly about access issues if we headed out the existing truck route. There's another graphic in the back on the lower part that looks at other alternative roadways that were looked at heading down the existing Mantua Avenue. Those existing, if we went down the rail route of Mantua Avenue, we would also be impacting approximately 30 different residential units. By going across Mantua Creek in a range of different scenarios, we end up impacting 4. We impact 3 businesses, or 2 businesses, 1 is the GCUA, and then we do impact 1 residential or 1 private property. Different configurations. As you can see up here, most of which cross Mantua Creek here. There was another one that tried to cross up over here that flew over top of New Star, previous Citgo, and there's a number from the last public meeting we had. The Glenton Realty Development asked us to look at different alternatives of coming up from the southern access. Those have been looked at, and the problem is that in order to minimize costs from the overall development of the access road and bridge, 2 things. 1, you need to minimize impacts to wetlands, because ultimately, there's another graphic in the back that you will see. This area, as you remember, Mantua Creek used to meander through here. So all of this area has been filled. It's now primarily wetlands. Therefore, one of the issues with the DEP is you need to minimize wetlands.